A special hello to any returning viewers, and if you're new, take some time to relax. You obviously looked for this video for a reason. Today we're going to do some scales, and I'm going to teach you how, through my own long trials. Now, big scales are easy enough. You just draw a circle, and you can make a scale with it. Now you do this a couple times, and eventually you have coherent scales instead of just a circle. What if you wanted small? Well, welcome to the painful world. Now, despite whatever some videos may claim, there's not really a definitive way to do scales. As with most things, especially the more you get into biology, there's an it depends, and it's just fantastic. This right here is cross-hatching. I'd recommend you do this with a sharper knife, but because this is so far from my face, I don't want to cut myself. I'm that clumsy. And as you can see, this can have some unpleasant drag marks. So guess what? You get to fix those. And these would be good for like some crocodilian belly scales or something. So you can just put it back in the same lane and take down the drag marks. Reset. Now welcome to the dark side of scales. And these are ones that take some precision. You get the sharpest pin tool you can find with the smallest tip, and you draw circles. And this may look easy, but that's because this is an easy angle. Watch this. Now it's the inner fold of a thigh, and because of the model shape, you have to hold it like this. Notice how much less quality is going to be there. That is why I have steered away from doing these if I can. It's just not consistent, and they start to look bad when you have to do them at a weird angle. Now, the way I've best done scales is with scale pushers. That's what I call them. I don't really care what other people call them, because it's mine and I'm going to do what I want. And this is a good way to get very consistent scales, but once again, once you have an angle on them, these can start to make a difference. So press lightly, and I'll show you something. You're going to want to have one that looks like this. Notice how all the edges are beveled. And that's because you can do this. Just lightly mesh them. And these scales are usually pretty muted. That's a given. But they are consistent, and the lumpy texture doesn't look too bad given the fact that these are scales. Now I'm going to show you how I made this. I took a little lump of clay, and I have this template scale pad right here. And you push it in, and then you get it around all the edges, catching at an angle so that it's going to push inward so you don't have anything that will leave a negative trace. There you go. I'm going to show you guys how I made this. Now these are what could be called the true scale pushers, and I'll show you how I make those in a second. But you take this little lump of clay, you roll it out, and then you ever so gently push the scales in. Now this one is a different size to the one over there, because those ones are extremely fragile and I don't really feel like making another one right now. At least not a permanent one. But this is just to show you how I do that. And this is also a perfectly valid option. I'll get more on that in a second. Now the single scale pushers, they will have the best work usually. But they're the hardest to use. So if you're on either a time constraint or you just don't have 17 years to spare, I wouldn't really use these. And you keep rolling it out further, that way the shell around the scale is smaller. You basically just want the hole and as little of the wall of clay around it as you can. So you keep poking it and you keep rolling it out to get the clay thinner and thinner. until you're left with this. And this would be perfectly usable if I baked it, but I'm not going to, because I already have this one. You can just keep pressing this in like this. And though these are obviously better looking than what I'm about to show you, these just take too much time. When you could have something like this. And look how many mediocre scales that put everywhere instead of fantastic scales that took more than 10 times as long. And you think, oh, well, one scale takes 3 seconds. That adds up, because there's over 300,000 scales on an accurate dinosaur. And scales like this wouldn't show up until 1/6 scale. 300,000 was also completely baseless, and I've probably corrected it right now, but I don't know what it is at the time of recording. Now, admittedly, the thumbnail had to be a tad clickbaity. These are just the ways I do it. These are not the definitive ways to sculpt scales. And this is another way to do it if you have a square-scaled creature. This is Tool, and it leaves beautiful indents for scales. Sometimes it doesn't leave them strong enough, though, and you can have to go again. Much better. Now, I actually used the tool scales for the belly of the Pararhabdodon. If you want to watch that one, if I can get the links working, it's in the description. So as you can see, like, all the tool texture going up. For the Pararhabdodon, I also use my scale stamps, but it won't focus right now. There we go. Then, like, you should just go watch the video if you want to see me break down all of them, but I also use the scales I showed at first, which I will show again to elaborate more on. Now, there is no one right way to sculpt scales. It more depends on what you're doing, as I've stated. Like, if a turtle, I would go with this. Very big scales, it'll be good for the arms and the back. But if you're going for like a lizard or a dinosaur, dinosaurs have small circular scales or polygonal, depending on which one you're doing, really. Most hadrosaurs and ceratopsians had polygonal scales. For theropods and sauropods, it varied on what part of the body you're looking at. Most of them had oddly square scales on the bottom. Snakes and lizards have overlapping diamond scales like this. So it really just depends on what you're doing, what vibe you want to go for. If you're doing it cartoony, just pick one. It doesn't really matter. If you really want to show off scales, I'd go with the biggest ones you can, because those can sell the vibe of like scales without having much work in them. Like, look how much easier it is to just draw a circle and call it a scale. So, like, I hope this helped. Bye. Oh yes, I forgot the necessary plugs. Like, subscribe, comment if you want to see more like this, or just other random tutorials. Let me know. If I have experience in it, I might do it. If I don't have experience in it, I might try it and then I might do it. But, peace.